I never thought a pair of rusty gates could kill me, but that February night, standing in 12-degree cold with my truck buried in snow, 800 yards back, staring at a chain wrapped in barbed wire, I knew I was in trouble. My name's Ira Keller. I'm 37, and I've spent the last decade studying how ground shifts, how ice creeps, how nature decides what stays standing and what collapses. I work alone most of the time, prefer it that way. Less people, less noise, more clarity. I'd been out on a week-long survey in the backcountry, measuring soil erosion along the ridges west of the county line. Cold work, honest work. When I got back to the trailhead that led to my cabin, the gates were waiting. They weren't there when I left. Metal frame, 6 feet tall, industrial lock, and a sign bolted to the center. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Signed by someone named K. Vargas, president of something called Woodland Estates Homeowners Association. I'd lived here 12 years, bought my land before any association existed. This trail, my trail, was the only winter access to my cabin. The long route around the highway added 14 miles, and tonight, ice storms had dropped trees across that road. Closed until morning, maybe longer. The cold bit through my jacket. My phone showed 1 bar of signal and 8% battery. I tried to squeeze through the gap on the side, but the barbed wire sliced into my sleeve. I felt it catch, then tear. Frost in the air, smoke from a distant chimney, the creak of ice under my boots. I pulled back, breathing hard, and stared at that lock. My multi-tool couldn't touch it. Too thick, too new. Then I heard engines. 2 snowmobiles roared out of the trees, headlights cutting through the dark. They stopped 10 feet away, engines idling, and 2 men climbed off. Security uniforms. Private company. One of them raised his phone, started recording. "Ma'am, you're trespassing on homeowners association land," he said. Casual, like he'd done this before. "Leave now, or we call the cops." I pointed at the trail behind them. "This is a public easement, Forest Service, 1954. I've got the map in my truck." He smiled, not friendly. "Lady, the association president says otherwise. We got our orders." "I live here. This is my only way home." "Not our problem." They climbed back on their machines and left, just like that. The sound of their engines faded into the trees, and I was alone again. The temperature dropped, 15 below, maybe lower. I tried walking through the woods, cutting around the gates, but the snow was waist deep. 200 yards in, I sank to my chest and had to claw my way back. By the time I reached my truck, my hands were numb. I spent that night in the cab, engine running for heat until the fuel gauge hit empty. Then I sat in the dark, wrapped in a sleeping bag, shivering. Every hour I'd check my phone. No new signal. Battery dying. In my pocket I felt the old compass, brass, heavy, engraved with my mentor's initials, AK. She'd given it to me 3 years ago, a month before she died. Fell through ice during a field survey because the rescue crew couldn't reach her in time. Wrong access road. Delayed response. I traced the engraving with my thumb and thought about how stupid it was to die the same way. Morning came slow. Gray light, no warmth. I walked back to the gates, hoping maybe I'd been wrong, maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. The gates were still there. I found a notice pinned to a tree nearby, printed on Woodland Estates letterhead. "Emergency meeting tonight, 7 p.m. Community Center. Subject, trail closure and security measures." I made it to the meeting. The community center was packed, 50, maybe 60 people, most of them new faces. The kind of folks who bought vacation properties in the last 5 years, built big timber frame houses with floor-to-ceiling windows. They didn't know the land, didn't know the winters, didn't know me. At the front of the room stood Karen Vargas, tall, fit, late 40s, wearing a North Face jacket that probably cost more than my truck. She had a slideshow ready, professional, polished. "Good evening, everyone," she said, smiling. "Tonight we're addressing a critical safety issue. The old forest trail, some of you know it, has become a liability. We've documented illegal activity, trespassing, poaching, drug paraphernalia. Our children play near that trail. Our families deserve protection." She clicked to the next slide. Photos of trash, a broken beer bottle, cigarette butts. I stood up. "That trail is my legal access. I've used it for 12 years. Every head turned. Karen's smile didn't move. Ms. Keller, you're not a member of this association. You purchased your property before we incorporated in 2018. You're an outsider. Your claimed access expired when we updated the boundary maps. Murmurs rippled through the room. A man in the third row stood. We pay $450 a year in dues. She pays nothing. Why should she get special treatment? Someone else? I heard she's a geologist, probably scouting for fracking sites. We need to protect our land. The room got louder, voices stacking on voices. I pulled out a folded map, old, creased Forest Service stamp from 1954. Red line marking the trail as public easement. I held it up. This trail is federal. It doesn't expire. Karen didn't even look at it. That map has no legal standing. We have an updated cadastral survey from 2019. The trail falls within association boundaries. It's closed, for everyone's safety. She clicked to the next slide. A survey map, clean lines, bright colors. The trail buried inside a thick green zone labeled HOA property. The room settled. People nodded. I looked around. No allies, no familiar faces. Just a wall of strangers who'd already made up their minds. Karen folded her arms. If you have further concerns, Ms. Keller, I suggest you consult an attorney. This meeting is for association members only. I left. Outside, the air bit cold again. I sat in my truck, hands shaking. Not from the temperature, from rage, from the weight of being erased. My phone buzzed. A text from the county office. Contract cancellation. The erosion study I'd been hired for, $22,000, pulled. Client cited conflict with local community. Too much risk. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then I made a call. Her name was Lucy Trent, 29, fresh out of law school, working pro bono for environmental cases. I'd met her at a conference 2 years ago. She answered on the third ring. Ira, it's late. What's wrong? I told her everything. The gates, the meeting, the map, Karen Vargas. Lucy was quiet for a long time. Then, I'll dig into it. Give me 2 days. 2 days felt like forever. But I didn't have a choice. I drove to a motel 15 miles out, paid cash for a room, and waited. On the second night, Lucy called back. Ira, you need to hear this. Karen Vargas isn't just the association president. She's married to Roy Vargas, owner of Vargas Development LLC. They're planning 12 luxury cabins on the land adjacent to your trail. But here's the thing. Their bank won't approve the loan unless the access is exclusive. No public easements. No through traffic. I felt my chest tighten. So they're erasing the trail to get financing. Exactly. If they close it, they clear $2.4 million in credit. Estimated profit, $800,000. Can we prove it? Prove conspiracy? Hard. But if we can prove the trail is still a valid federal easement, the gates come down. Problem is, Forest Service hasn't updated the status since 1987. They're saying it'll take 8 to 12 months for a new inspection. I close my eyes. I can't wait that long. Winter access is everything. Without it, I'm cut off. Lucy hesitated. Then we need another angle, something fast. But I didn't know what that was yet. And outside my motel window, the snow started falling again. The storm lasted 3 days. By the time it cleared, I'd lost another contract. $18,000, a university erosion study. Email said they were going in a different direction. Translation, they'd heard about the conflict and didn't want the liability. I sat in that motel room staring at my laptop, watching my career dissolve in real time. Lucy called on the fourth morning. I found something. Karen Vargas has been running a campaign on Facebook, Woodland Neighbors Watch Group, about 1,800 members. She's posting photos of you, old ones taken out of context. What kind of photos? You, standing next to drilling equipment. Looks like it's from years ago. My stomach dropped. Geothermal project, 10 years back. We were testing renewable energy sites, not fracking. She's not explaining that. She's calling you an agent for gas companies, saying you're planning to drill under their homes. People are buying it. I could hear the keyboard clicks on her end. She was already digging deeper. There's more, Lucy said. Fake accounts backing her up. Same phrasing, same talking points. Someone's coordinating this. Can we prove it's her? Not yet, but one of the bot accounts slipped, used a phrase that showed up in an internal association email. I saw a screenshot from another source. It's circumstantial, but it's there. I rubbed my face. My fingers still smelled like cold metal from the gates. What do we do? We need an independent land survey, someone who can verify the trail coordinates against the federal easement. I found a guy, Marvin Chu, 64, retired geodesist. He'll do a winter inspection with GPS tracking, but he wants $4,000 up front. $4,000 I didn't have. I thought about my savings, thought about the compass in my pocket, thought about my father's old geological microscope, an antique, worth maybe $5,000 to the right collector. He'd given it to me when I graduated, told me it had carried him through 30 years of field work. I'll get the money, I said. I sold the microscope that afternoon, posted it online, got a buyer within 2 hours, met him at a coffee shop in town, handed over the case, took the cash, didn't let myself think about it. That night, I drove back toward my cabin. Not all the way. I wasn't stupid enough to try the gates again, but close enough to see the lights from the association homes glowing through the trees. Warm, safe, locked behind their borders. I parked on the shoulder and walked into the woods. The snow was deep, but I knew these paths. I'd mapped half this forest over the years. 20 minutes in, I found the old markers. Small metal posts driven into the ground decades ago by the Forest Service. Boundary markers for the federal easement. Most people wouldn't recognize them, moss-covered, half-buried. But I knew what they meant. I took photos, GPS coordinates, logged everything. Then I kept walking. The trail wound through dense pines, past a frozen creek, up a ridge where the wind cut like a blade. I was looking for something specific, a junction point, the place where the trail intersected with the association's claimed boundary. I found it just after midnight, and that's when I saw the problem. The association's survey map, the one Karen had shown at the meeting, placed their boundary line 150 meters east of where I was standing, but the federal markers were right here, in the dirt, unmoved. Either the Forest Service had been wrong for 70 years, or someone had fudged the numbers. I crouched down, brushed snow off one of the markers, and ran my fingers over the stamped date, 1954. Original placement. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. I pulled out my phone, barely any signal, battery at 14%, and called Lucy. They moved the line, I said. What? The association survey. It's off by 150 meters. The gates aren't on their land. They're on federal land. Lucy went quiet. I could hear her breathing, thinking. That's a federal violation, Encroachment Act. If we can prove it, I just did. I'm standing at the original markers right now. Take photos, document everything. But Ira, listen. Forest Service won't act fast on a complaint. They're backlogged for months. We need public pressure, something that forces them to move now. Like what? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. I hung up and started walking back. My legs ached. My fingers were numb again. The cold pressed in from every direction. And for a moment, I thought about my mentor, about how she must have felt in those last minutes, trapped under ice, waiting for help that came too late. I wasn't going to let that happen to me. When I got back to the truck, I found a note tucked under the wiper blade. Handwritten, block letters, no signature. Leave now or we make you. I looked around, trees, darkness, no movement. But someone had been here. Someone was watching. I climbed into the truck, locked the doors, and drove back to the motel. Didn't sleep. Kept the lights on. Kept checking the parking lot through the window. The next morning, I went back to my cabin the long way. 14 miles through town, winding back roads, an extra hour of driving. The highway was finally clear. When I got there, I found both my truck tires slashed. Not punctured, slashed. Clean cuts, deliberate. No cameras, no witnesses. Just me and $400 I didn't have for replacements. I sat on the ground next to the truck and felt something crack inside me. Not panic, not fear, just a cold, sharp clarity. They wanted me gone. They wanted me silent. They wanted me to fold. I wasn't going to fold. I called Marvin Chu, the geodesist Lucy had found. Older guy, slow voice, careful with his words. I told him what I'd found, told him about the markers, the coordinates, the gates. I can be there in 3 days, he said, but I need access to the trail. The gates are locked. Then we'll document that too. Federal land, federal violation. If they're blocking access, that's part of the evidence. 3 days. I could last 3 days. That night, the temperature dropped to 18 below. I ran the generator until it sputtered out, then wrapped myself in every blanket I owned and waited for morning. My phone buzzed just before dawn, a message from an unknown number. "You don't belong here." I deleted it, didn't respond. But my hands were shaking when I set the phone down, because whoever sent it was right about one thing. I didn't belong here, not anymore, not in their version of this place. But I wasn't leaving. And if they wanted a fight, I'd give them one they wouldn't forget. Marvin Chu arrived on a Tuesday morning, driving a beat-up Subaru with mud caked on the wheel wells and a bumper sticker that read, "Geodesy, because flat Earth is fiction." He was shorter than I expected, compact build, wire-frame glasses, hands that moved with precision when he shook mine. "You're the woman with the gate problem," he said. That's putting it lightly. He smiled, not sympathetic, just factual. "Let's see what we're dealing with." We drove out to the trailhead together. The gates were still there, chain still wrapped tight, padlock gleaming. Marvin walked up to them like he was inspecting a specimen, pulled out a handheld GPS unit, older model, but military grade, started taking readings. "These coordinates," he said after a minute, "put us 47 meters inside federal easement land." "Can you prove that?" "Already am." He tapped the screen. "Forest Service boundary data pulled from the national database, cross-referenced with your 1954 map and the original survey markers you photographed. The math doesn't lie. This gate is illegal." Relief hit me like a wave. "So we can get it removed." Marvin tilted his head. "Technically, yes. Forest Service has jurisdiction. But here's the thing. They won't move without political pressure. You file a complaint, it sits in a queue for months, maybe a year. You need leverage." "Like what?" "Public exposure, media, something that makes ignoring this costly." I thought about that. Thought about Karen Vargas and her polished slideshow and her fake Facebook accounts. Thought about how good she was at controlling the narrative. "What if we go bigger?" I said. "Not just a complaint, a demonstration, something people can see." Marvin raised an eyebrow. "What kind of demonstration?" "There's a county winter safety fair coming up in 2 weeks. Public event, couple hundred people, local officials, media coverage. What if we present the evidence there? Show everyone what's happening?" He considered it. "You'd need visual proof, something undeniable. We've got GPS data. We've got photos of the markers. We've got your analysis." "That's technical. You need emotional impact, something that hits people in the gut." I knew what he meant. Numbers didn't move crowds. Stories did. "I fell through ice last week," I said quietly. "During the storm, tried to hike around the gates through the woods. Almost didn't make it out." Marvin's expression shifted. "You documented that?" "No, I was too busy trying not to die." "Then we recreate it. Not literally, but we show what happens when access gets cut off. Emergency response times, safety risks, real consequences." I nodded slowly. It was risky. It was bold. It was exactly what I needed. We spent the next 3 days building the case. Marvin ran GPS overlays, printed maps with color-coded boundary lines, compiled federal records. Lucy worked the legal angle, drafted a formal complaint to Forest Service with copies to the county sheriff and local news outlets. And I started reaching out to people. First call went to the volunteer fire department. Asked them about response times to the cabins on the far side of the trail. The captain, guy named Derek, mid-50s, voice like gravel, didn't sugarcoat it. "Highway route adds 9 minutes minimum," he said. "Longer in winter, and that assumes the bridge holds our weight, which it won't. We'd have to stage equipment, bring in smaller trucks. You're looking at 15, maybe 20 minutes delay." "What's the survival window for someone trapped in a structure fire?" Silence. Then, "Depends, but 20 minutes? Most people don't make it." "Would you be willing to say that publicly?" Another pause. "If it helps keep people safe, yeah, I'll say it." Second call went to the county health department. Asked about medical evacuation protocols for remote properties. Got transferred 3 times, finally reached a coordinator who confirmed what I already suspected. Ambulances couldn't navigate the highway detour in bad weather. They'd need helicopter transport, which meant weather-dependent delays. "How often does weather ground helicopters in winter?" I asked. 60% of the time. I thanked her and hung up. Third call was harder. I reached out to 3 families who lived on the far side of the trail. The ones who'd lose access if the gates stayed locked. 2 wouldn't talk to me. Doors closed. Phones disconnected. But the third family, Jeff and Maria Cole, parents of 2 young kids, agreed to meet. We sat in their kitchen, small wood-burning stove in the corner, kids' drawings taped to the fridge. Jeff was maybe 40, carpenter's hands, tired eyes. Maria was quieter, watched me like she was deciding whether to trust me. "We bought this place 3 years ago," Jeff said. "Saved for 10 years to afford it. We knew it was remote. That was the point. Get away from the noise, raise the kids somewhere clean." "What did Karen tell you about the gates?" "That it was temporary, for security. She said we could still use the trail if we joined the association." "Did you join?" Maria shook her head. $450 a year. We can't afford that. We're barely making the mortgage." "So you're locked out too?" Jeff nodded. "We've been using the highway route, but last week, when the ice storm hit, we couldn't get out for 4 days. No groceries, no way to get to work. My daughter had a fever, 103, and we couldn't reach a doctor. I felt something tighten in my chest." "Would you be willing to talk about that at the safety fair?" They looked at each other. Long silence. "If it means our kids stay safe," Maria said finally, "yes." I left their house with a knot in my stomach and a plan taking shape. The winter safety fair was held in the county community center. Big open hall, vendor booths along the walls, stage at the front. I registered for a presentation slot under the title Remote Access and Emergency Preparedness. Karen didn't know I was coming. The day before the event, Lucy called with bad news. "Ira, there's a problem. Karen filed a restraining petition against you. Claims you've been harassing association members, trespassing on private property. She's asking for a temporary injunction to bar you from the fairgrounds." My blood went cold. "Can she do that?" "She can try. Hearing scheduled for tomorrow morning. If the judge grants it, you won't be able to present." "We can't let that happen." "I'm working on it, but you need to be ready for the possibility." I hung up and stared at the wall. Everything I'd built, the evidence, the testimonies, the plan, could collapse in one courtroom decision. That night I couldn't sleep, kept replaying the meeting in my head, Karen's smile, the crowd turning against me, the weight of being erased. I thought about my mentor again, thought about the compass in my pocket, thought about all the times I'd stood on unstable ground and had to decide, retreat or hold position. I'd never been good at retreating. The hearing was at 9 a.m. Small courtroom, fluorescent lights, judge who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen sat on the opposite side with her lawyer, expensive suit, leather briefcase, the kind of confidence money buys. Lucy presented our case, explained the federal easement, the GPS evidence, the public safety concerns, argued that I had every right to speak at a public event. Karen's lawyer countered, called me a disruptive presence, cited the Facebook posts, carefully edited to make me look unstable, played a recording of me trespassing near the gates. The judge listened, didn't interrupt, didn't show emotion. Then he ruled. Petition denied. Ms. Keller has demonstrated legitimate public interest concerns. The restraining request is premature and unsupported. She may attend the safety fair. I exhaled, felt Lucy's hand on my shoulder. Karen's face didn't move, but her lawyer whispered something sharp in her ear. We left the courthouse and drove straight to the fairgrounds. The hall was already filling up. Families, retirees, county officials, and folding chairs near the front. I saw the sheriff, tall guy, gray mustache, arms crossed. Saw a local news crew setting up cameras. And I saw Karen, standing near the stage, talking to the event coordinator, gesturing toward me. She was trying to get my slot pulled. I walked over, didn't wait for permission. "Problem, Karen?" She turned, smile locked in place. "Just clarifying the schedule. We wouldn't want any disruptions. I'm presenting at 2 p.m. That hasn't changed." "We'll see." The coordinator looked uncomfortable. "Ms. Keller, your topic. There's been some concern it might be too politically charged. It's about emergency access. That's safety, not politics." Karen stepped closer. "You're using this platform to attack the association, to spread misinformation. I won't allow it." I met her eyes, cold, controlled. "You don't get to decide what I say." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then the coordinator cleared his throat. "You have 15 minutes at 2 p.m. Stay on topic." Karen's smile tightened, but she stepped back. I spent the next 2 hours rehearsing, going over the maps, checking the slides. Marvin arrived with printed overlays. Jeff and Maria showed up with their kids, nervous but ready. At 1:50 p.m., I took the stage. The crowd was maybe 200 strong. Some I recognized from the association meeting. Some were strangers. The news camera's red light blinked on. I started simple, showed the map, explained the trail, pointed out the federal markers. Then I showed Marvin's GPS overlay, the gates highlighted in red, sitting 47 meters inside federal land. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "This isn't about property rights," I said. "It's about safety. When you block emergency access, you put lives at risk." I played the audio clip from Captain Derek. His voice filled the room. 20 minutes delay. Most people don't make it. The murmurs got louder. Then Jeff stood up, walked to the mic, told his story, his daughter's fever, 4 days trapped, no way out. Maria's voice cracked when she added, "We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking not to die because someone wanted to protect their property values." The room went silent. And then I showed the final slide, a photo I'd taken during the ice storm. Me standing at the trail markers, frozen creek behind me, gates visible in the distance. "I fell through ice trying to reach my home," I said quietly. "Because someone decided access was negotiable. It's not." I looked directly at Karen. She was standing near the back, arms crossed, face unreadable. "The gates are on federal land. They're illegal, and they're coming down." The room erupted. Questions, shouts. The sheriff stood up, walked toward the stage. The news crew swarmed closer, and Karen Vargas walked out. But I wasn't watching her anymore. Because in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't over, not even close. But for the first time in weeks, I wasn't fighting alone. The fallout started before I even left the building. The sheriff cornered me near the exit, Marvin's GPS data still in my hands. His name was Ryan Beck, and he had the look of someone who'd seen enough small-town drama to fill a library. "You've got my attention," he said, "but federal land means federal jurisdiction. I can't just cut that lock without authorization." "The Forest Service has jurisdiction," I said. "Can you contact them?" "Already did. 3 weeks ago, when the gates first went up, they said they'd send someone to investigate. Haven't heard back since." Of course they hadn't. "So what now?" I asked. Beck rubbed his jaw. "Your GPS evidence is solid. If you file a formal trespass complaint against the Association for Encroachment on Federal Land, that might speed things up. But it'll take time. Government doesn't move fast. I don't have time." He looked at me for a long moment. "I know, but that's the reality." I watched him walk away, and something inside me shifted. This wasn't about patience anymore. This was about pressure. The news segment aired that night. Local station, 6 p.m. slot. They ran the whole story. My presentation, Jeff's testimony, Marvin's maps. Showed Karen walking out. Ended with a question. Who's responsible when emergency access becomes a bargaining chip? Within 2 hours, the video had 15,000 views online. By morning, 50,000. Comments poured in, some supportive, some vicious. But the momentum was building. And then the counterattack started. Karen didn't come at me directly. She was smarter than that. Instead, she went after my credibility. A blog post appeared on a local news site. Anonymous author, but the writing style was unmistakable. It accused me of grandstanding for profit, claimed I was secretly working for a development company that wanted to buy up the trail for commercial use. Cited unnamed sources. Included photos of me at industry conferences, shaking hands with executives. None of it was true, but it didn't need to be. The story got picked up by the Woodland Neighbors Watch Group. Within hours, people were sharing it, adding their own commentary. I knew she wasn't telling the whole truth. Always a hidden agenda. She's trying to destroy our community. My phone started ringing. Anonymous calls, heavy breathing, hang-ups. Someone threw a rock through my truck window. Left a note on the seat. Last warning. Lucy called me at midnight. "Ira, we need to talk strategy. This is escalating." I noticed. Karen's trying to turn public opinion before the Forest Service makes a decision. If she can paint you as the villain, it won't matter what the evidence says. People will side with her. So what do I do? We go after the money. I've been digging into Vargas Development LLC, their loan for the cabin project. $2.4 million from Summit Ridge Bank. The approval is contingent on one condition: proof of exclusive access with no public easements. If the trail stays open, the loan collapses. I sat up straighter. Can we prove that? I've got the loan documents, pulled them from public filings. There's a clause, Covenant Section 7, that explicitly requires unencumbered access rights. If the federal easement is reinstated, they can't meet that requirement. And the bank pulls funding. Exactly. Which means Karen's not just fighting for control. She's fighting for $800,000 in profit. And if we can show that publicly, it changes everything. I felt something click into place. The bank is the weak point. And right, but we need them to act. And banks don't act unless they're forced to. What if we contact them directly? Show them the GPS evidence, the federal easement data. Tell them their loan is tied to an illegal enclosure. Lucy was quiet for a beat. That could work, but it's risky. If we tip them off too early, Karen might restructure the deal. We need timing. When's the loan supposed to close? 2 weeks, March 15th. I thought about that. 2 weeks, just enough time to force a decision. Let's do it, I said. The next morning, Lucy drafted a letter to Summit Ridge Bank. Formal, detailed. Included Marvin's GPS analysis, the federal survey data, and a legal opinion stating that the gates constituted unlawful encroachment. She sent it via certified mail and email to 3 executives: the loan officer, the risk assessment manager, and the regional director. Then we waited. 3 days passed. Nothing. On the 4th day, I got a call from an unknown number. Male voice, clipped and professional. Ms. Keller, this is David Brennan, Risk Management at Summit Ridge. I received your communication regarding the Vargas development loan. I'd like to discuss it in person. Are you available tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I glanced at Lucy, who was sitting across from me at the motel. She nodded. I'll be there, I said. We met at a coffee shop halfway between my cabin and the city. Brennan was mid-40s, suit without a tie, laptop bag over his shoulder. He ordered black coffee and got straight to the point. Your claims, if accurate, present significant liability for the bank, he said. We can't finance a project with contested access rights. Too much legal risk. The access isn't contested, I said. It's federal, has been since 1954. That's what your data suggests. But the association provided us with a different survey, one that shows clear private ownership. I pulled out Marvin's report, slid it across the table. Their survey is wrong. The coordinates don't match federal records. Either they made a mistake or they lied. Either way, your loan is tied to an illegal structure. Brennan read through the report slowly. His expression didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten. If this is accurate, he said, we'll need to reassess the loan terms. How long will that take? 48 hours for internal review. If we determine there's a material breach of the covenant, we'll suspend disbursement pending resolution. I leaned forward. People are being cut off from their homes. Emergency services can't get through. Every day that gate stays locked, someone could die. 48 hours might be too long. Brennan met my eyes. I understand, but I have a process to follow. He stood up, closed his laptop. I'll be in touch. And then he left. Lucy and I sat in silence for a moment. Do you think he'll do it? I asked. He has to. If the bank funds a project tied to illegal encroachment, they're on the hook for damages. It's basic risk management. And if Karen restructures the deal, then we've bought ourselves time, and time is what we need. I wanted to believe her, but I'd learned not to count on institutions to do the right thing. That night, the temperature dropped again, 20 below. I drove out to the trail, parked 100 yards back, and walked to the gates on foot. They were still there, still locked, still blocking everything. I stood in the cold, staring at that chain, and felt the weight of it all pressing down. The contracts I'd lost, the threats, the isolation, the creeping exhaustion of fighting alone. And then I heard a sound behind me. Footsteps, crunching snow. I turned, heart pounding, and saw a figure emerging from the trees. It was Jeff Cole, jacket pulled tight, flashlight in his hand. "It figured you'd be here," he said. "What are you doing out here?" "It's same as you, checking to see if anything's changed." He stopped a few feet away. "Maria wanted me to tell you something. We talked to the other families on the trail, the ones who wouldn't meet with you before. They're ready to talk now. After the fair, after the news coverage, they see it differently. How many families? 5, including us. All of them willing to testify. All of them ready to push back. I felt something loosen in my chest. That's good. That's really good. Jeff nodded. You started this, but you're not alone anymore. We're with you. He turned and walked back into the trees, and I stood there in the dark, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. The next day, Brennan called. Ms. Keller, I've completed the internal review. Based on the evidence you provided, Summit Ridge Bank is suspending loan disbursement to Vargas Development pending resolution of the easement dispute. We've notified the borrower that they must provide clear proof of unencumbered access, or the loan will be formally withdrawn. I exhaled. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank your geodesist. His data was airtight. I hung up and immediately called Lucy. The bank pulled the loan, I said. Are you serious? Dead serious. Karen just lost $2.4 million in financing. Lucy laughed. Actually laughed. That's the leverage. Now she has to negotiate. Or fight harder. Either way, we've got her attention. But I knew Karen Vargas, and I knew she wouldn't go down quietly. That night, I got another message. Unknown number again. You think you won? You haven't seen what we can do. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I deleted it, turned off my phone, and went to bed. Because tomorrow, one way or another, this was going to end. The call came at 6 a.m. Forest Service, finally. A woman named Patricia Oakes, district supervisor. Voice flat with bureaucratic fatigue. Ms. Keller, we've reviewed your complaint and the supporting GPS documentation. We're prepared to conduct a field inspection of the disputed easement. Can you be available this Friday at 9 a.m.? Friday, 2 days away. I'll be there, I said. Good. And, Ms. Keller, we'll need access to the trail. If those gates are still locked, we'll have them removed on site. Federal obstruction statute. I felt something sharp and bright cut through the exhaustion. Understood. When I hung up, Lucy was already texting me. Bank just informed Vargas Development that the loan is officially withdrawn. Karen's fighting it, but she's got no leverage. It's over. Not yet it wasn't. Because I knew Karen wouldn't let this die quietly. That morning, I drove to the trail one last time before the inspection. The gates were still there, but something felt different. The air was colder, sharper, like the forest was holding its breath. I walked the perimeter, checking the old markers, making sure everything was documented. And that's when I saw her. Karen Vargas, standing 50 feet away near the tree line, watching me. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there in her expensive jacket, hands in her pockets, expression unreadable. Finally, she walked closer. You cost me everything, she said, quiet, almost conversational. You cost yourself everything, I said. You built a scam on federal land and expected no one to notice. That trail was abandoned. No one used it for years. We were improving the area, making it safe. By locking people out, by threatening families, by destroying my career. Karen's jaw tightened. You could have joined the association, worked with us. Instead, you made this personal. It was always personal. You just didn't care until it affected your profit margin. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind moved through the pines, carrying the smell of snow and cold earth. The Forest Service is coming Friday, I said. They're taking the gates down. You can fight it, but you'll lose. Karen stared at me. Then she did something I didn't expect. She laughed, low and bitter. You think this ends with the gates coming down? You think you've won? She shook her head. You've made enemies, Ira. People in this community who will remember what you did. You'll never work here again. Never be trusted. You'll spend the rest of your life fighting just to belong. I thought about that. Thought about the contracts I'd lost, the threats, the isolation, and I realized she was probably right. But I also realized I didn't care. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll be able to get home. Karen's expression hardened. She turned and walked away without another word. I stood there alone, watching her disappear into the trees, and felt the weight of the compass in my pocket. Friday came fast. I met Patricia Oakes and her team at the trailhead. 3 Forest Service rangers, a county surveyor, and Sheriff Beck. They brought bolt cutters, a GPS unit, and official documentation authorizing gate removal. The inspection took less than an hour. Patricia walked the trail with Marvin's maps, cross-referenced the coordinates, checked the original markers, When she was done, she turned to the sheriff. This easement is federally protected under the 1954 survey. The gates are in violation of encroachment statutes. Remove them. Beck nodded, walked to the gates, cut the lock with one clean motion. The chain fell to the ground with a heavy metallic clatter. And just like that, it was over. The gates stayed down. The Forest Service filed a formal restoration order, placing the trail under county management with federal oversight. No association, no locks. Public access reinstated. Karen Vargas tried to appeal, filed motions, hired lawyers, claimed the inspection was biased. None of it worked. By the end of March, Vargas Development LLC had folded. The cabin project was dead. But Karen was right about one thing. I paid for it. 2 more contracts canceled in the following month. Clients who didn't want to touch controversial work. My reputation in the region was shredded. People whispered when I walked into the hardware store, turned away when I tried to make small talk. I became the woman who'd fought the association, the troublemaker, the outsider. Some days it felt like I'd traded access to my home for access to my career. But then Jeff cold called, asked if I'd consult on an erosion study for his property, paid me fair rate, no questions asked. Then Maria referred me to another family, and another. Slowly, quietly, a different kind of network started to build. People who'd been locked out. People who'd been silenced. People who understood what it meant to fight for something that should have been simple. It wasn't enough to replace what I'd lost, but it was something. One afternoon in late April, I drove out to the trail. The snow had melted, leaving mud and new grass. The old gate posts were still there, rusted and empty, like gravestones marking a battle no one wanted to remember. I walked the trail all the way to my cabin. Took 2 hours. My legs ached by the end, but it felt good, felt right. When I got home, I sat on the porch and pulled out the compass, turned it over in my hands, traced the engraving with my thumb. AK. My mentor. The woman who taught me that solid ground wasn't a guarantee. That sometimes you had to measure, recalculate, and hold your position even when everything around you was shifting. She died because access was delayed, because bureaucracy moved slower than ice. I'd fought so that wouldn't happen again. And I'd won, sort of. The trail was open, the families were safe, emergency services could get through. But I was alone, still an outsider, still paying the price. Was it worth it? I thought about that for a long time. And then I thought about Jeff's daughter, the one who'd had the fever, trapped for 4 days because Karen had locked the gates. She was fine now, healthy, safe. I thought about the next family who'd move on to the trail, the ones who wouldn't have to fight this fight because I'd already fought it. I thought about my mentor, falling through ice, waiting for help that never came fast enough. And I realized the answer. Yeah, it was worth it. I stood up, walked inside, and made dinner. Simple, quiet. The kind of evening that doesn't make headlines or change the world. But it was mine, in a place I could reach, on land I could call home, and no one could take that away. 3 months later, I got a call from a developer in the next county. Big project, needed a geologist who wasn't afraid of complicated politics. Someone who could handle pressure. They'd heard about the trail fight, about how I'd gone up against an entire association and won. "We need someone like you," the guy said. "Someone who doesn't back down." I took the job, and as I drove out to the site that first morning, passing the trail that had almost cost me everything, I felt something settle in my chest. Not relief, not triumph, just clarity. I'd stood on unstable ground and held my position. And I'd do it again, because some things are worth fighting for, even when the cost is everything you thought you needed, even when you're standing alone, even when the world tells you to walk away. You hold your ground, you measure the distance, and you find your way home.